Cool. Well, since it's 1 o'clock, why don't we go ahead and get started? Is that okay with you?
We shall. Let's do that.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on today's Bloomerang webinar. Good morning if you're on the East Coast or somewhere in between, perhaps. Thanks for being here. My name is Stephen Shattuck, and as always, I'll be moderating today's discussion. And before we begin, I just want to do a little housekeeping items. I want to let everyone know that we are recording this session, and I'll be sending out the slides and a recording a little bit later on this afternoon. So look for an email from me in case you have to leave early, or perhaps you want to review the content or share it with someone on your team. We'd love for you to do that. Just look for the recording from me a little later on this afternoon. And as you're listening to our guest, please feel free to use that chat box right there on your screen. We're going to save some time for Q&A at the end. So don't be shy. Ask Larry any questions you may have, any comments about what he's saying. I'll see those questions, and I'll be moderating those to Larry a little later on towards the end of the session. And just in case this is your first webinar with us, welcome. We do these webinars every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So excited for this one. It's the first one of the year. But in addition to all the webinars and educational resources we have, Bloomerang is also a donor database software. So if you're in the market for that, or if you're interested in learning more, you can check out our website, see all of our features. You can get a video demo if you're into that. We'd love for you to check out the software. That's just a little bit about us, and right now I want to talk about our guest. He is Larry C. Johnson, CFRE. Hey Larry, how's it going?
Well, it's going pretty well, even though technology, I'm rather challenged at the moment.
Technology is always a barrier, it seems like, but that's okay. We're happy to have you. For those of you who don't know Larry, he is an internationally recognized philanthropy and fundraising coach. He's the author of the award-winning book, The 8 Principles of Sustainable Fundraising. Great book. I've got it here on my bookshelf. It's actually signed by Larry himself. Really good. Larry is ranked in the top 15 fundraising consultants in the United States by the Wall Street Business Network, and he was awarded the Association of Fundraising Professionals Outstanding Development Executive distinction in 2010. So Larry, it's really great to have you here. I've got your slides queued up, my friend, and right now we're looking at the why and what slide. So if you want to start there, you can take it away for us.
All right. Well, I ask that you unmute everyone because since I don't have a screen, I can't see questions that are typed, although I know that Steve will be able to see them. I'm very interested in having some discussion and some interaction. I think that benefits everyone. And so the first thing I'd like to know is, are you, the people that are here, are you here to raise more money in 2015? Is that why you're here today? I hear some yeses.
Larry, I should say people won't be able to speak audibly, but we're getting a lot of yeses in the chat room. People saying yes.
Okay, well then you're going to have to be their voice then.
I will be. I'll be their voice for you, my friend.
All right. Well, second question is, do you want to keep on raising more money year in and year out? Is that another thing you would like to do today?
More yeses are piling in, lots of courses, most certainly.
All right, great.
You got people's attention.
Well, and the last question is, do you see what you do as a calling?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, for sure. Lots of yeses piling in. I haven't seen a single no, Larry.
Great. Well, then you're in the right place. All right. Let's go to the next screen. Are we there?
We're here.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about fundraising for elites today, and it may be a little bit different than what you anticipate, but go to the next screen, please. I want to first give my thanks to each of you for participating today. You took time out of your day to do this. That's important to me, and I want to return value to you today so that when you finish, you'll have something to take with you. And secondly, I do want to thank Bloomerang, our host. And they're very gracious to do this, and it's a service they do because they really believe in growing philanthropy. They're win-win people. So there's the commercial, Steve. And he didn't ask me to say that, by the way. Let's go to the next slide. We there?
All right. We are.
All right. Well, here's what you're going to learn today. You're going to learn the primary obstacle to being successful with sustained fundraising success. And I use that term very specific, sustained fundraising success. People can raise one-up money in a lot of different ways and do it very well. We had only to see the Ice Bucket Challenge in this previous summer to understand that fact. But I'm talking about what really hangs us up with regard to being sustained in our efforts. Secondly, we're going to talk about one of the 8 fundamental principles that govern philanthropic revenue growth. Believe it or not, there are principles that are out there that are really operating whether you know them or not, and they materially affect your success. We're going to talk about one of those today. And thirdly, we're going to talk about why that particular principle is essential, but it may be counterintuitive. Let's go to the next thing. He said a little bit more about me. I'll just say a few things. You know, I've been doing this for about 25 years. I've been in small and large programs. I've been in staff roles, in leadership roles, and in coaching roles. You know, I have been where you are. I have seen the challenges that you face. I've had goals placed to me. I've had difficult board members. I've had difficult bosses. I have seen these things. I built 2 programs from the ground up. They were both university programs. And although I'm not a big one to talk about, bringing home the bacon, I have closed over $50 million in gifts myself personally. But I put a proviso in there, and that is every serious fundraiser knows that raising money is a team effort. It's not just one person. I may have been the person that got the donor to say yes and closed it, but that's really one part of the whole process. And fourthly, my experience is really national in scope. I've been involved with organizations in education, healthcare, social service, the arts, youth, community, and of course faith-based organizations. Let's go to the next slide, Steve. Are we there?
We're there.
All right. Oh, and by the way, I just want to say, even though I can't hear your voices and I can't even see the chat box because of the computer going on the fritz here, Steve can, and I want you to feel very comfortable piping up and asking questions in the middle, and Steve can relay those to me. And if it looks like it's going to be a difficult question to answer and take longer than we anticipate, what we can do is we can make arrangements and I can talk to you individually at some later time. So when you start fundraising, where do you start? You see some things there on the screen. Is it direct mail? Is it funding? Is it peer-to-peer? Is it events? Is it direct one-on-one solicitation? Is it telephone solicitation? Oh, we all love that, don't we? Or are you going from a data regression research, the so-called big data approach, which is so popular now? I'd like to know, how many of you out there are at least using 4 of these techniques right now? Can you give me an idea, Steve?
Yeah, we got a couple people saying all of them. 1 to 3. Someone saying lots of them. Yes, the first 4. Most people are using all of them, it looks like.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say something that will, I think, confound some of you. None of these are where you start. Absolutely none of them. That doesn't mean they don't have value. That doesn't mean they aren't productive. But if you're looking to build a sustained program that delivers year in, year out, and it multiplies, none of these is where you start. So let's go to the next slide. And the reason why is because every single one of those is a process. A process are tools, techniques, and that thing we really like, the silver bullet. Has anyone there on the webinar found a silver bullet for their program? If they do, I want to hear about it right now.
Me too, actually. Nope. A couple no's. Heck no.
Well, I just want to make sure because, sometimes, things can happen. So my point is, process is not where you start, and yet is the place that we most often go to. It's the easiest. It's what's comfortable. It's what we know. There's nothing wrong with that. My email box, and I suggest probably yours as well, every single day, they're flooded with a new vendor, a new technique. And as good as a CRM is, I think people at Bloomerang would tell you that it's a tool. It's not going to supplant for some other things that are more important that we're going to talk about today. It's something that supports what you do. It's something that helps you, but it's not an end-all, be-all, and it's not the place to begin in your program. Let's go to the next slide.
All right.
Let's take a step back for a minute. Let's look at the concept of paradigm. Well, what is a paradigm? Well, in this case, a paradigm is a mental framework of your organization, and it's specific to you. They are characteristics specific to you. Does anybody have any idea what sort of characteristics I'm talking about? Can you suggest a few? So what would be some defining characteristics of your organization? Can we get some responses?
Got some people typing. Some people are donor-centric, grassroots. People are saying values-based. People are talking about who they serve. Education, faith-based, advocacy. So we're getting some mixes of what people serve and kind of their values as well.
Okay, we're on the right track. Let's go to the next slide.
Right.
Here are some parameters that I've tried to isolate and make more general that you can make specific to your organization. Things that describe you would be certainly your size, and there's different ways of using that size number. That can be area served, that can be numbers of employees, a lot of other things. The demography of who you serve, the demography of your supporters, the geography of who you serve, the geography of your supporters, core values, those were mentioned. And those, there again, it's both those who are served and those who invest or support you. Another key piece is what are your revenue streams? That's going to have a lot to do with how you structure your fundraising program. And then what is your mission? Are there any on this page that I've missed? Are there others that we could suggest? Would people suggest those, please?
Got some people typing now, Larry. Some people are saying the year they were established, revenue sources, you covered that. How about defining stories? Lori says the stories that define them. Linda says what makes you unique, so maybe unique differentiator. What their purpose is.
Can she be more specific? Let's talk about unique. What are some things that would make them unique? Now, you know, I use the word unique very carefully. Unique means absolutely no other one like it anywhere.
Susan's saying they're all volunteer, no government funding. Yeah, Linda's saying there's no one like us anywhere.
Well, are they all are they human beings that are in this organization? If they are, I would question that.
Yeah, I think Susan agrees with you. Susan just says most orgs are not unique; they just think that they are.
Well, Susan, I tend to agree with you. One of the things that makes PA Principles, the Sustainable Fundraising, which is what I teach, work is that, and we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but is that we're all human beings and we're all subject to the same criteria. We all think and act very much alike. In fact, you know, I read several years ago in Alan Greenspan's memoir, and half of it was a biography, half of it was economic philosophy. But he made a comment in that book that I've never forgotten. He said during the course of his entire career, traveling the world, meeting people from all over the world in disparate cultures, what he discovered, and for him it was a revelation, that despite the cultural differences, that people are very much the same in who they are, what they value, and what they want out of their lives, which I thought was very interesting for someone like him. He certainly had more experience than I have in this. So my point is, we've got these parameters now, and we're talking about constructing a paradigm from these parameters that is very specific, maybe not unique, but it's certainly specific to who you are, and that will vary slightly from organization to organization. And this is a very important step. But I'm going to suggest to you it's still not the place we need to begin. We're getting closer, but we're still not there yet. Let's go to the next slide, Steve.
All right.
Here you see the concept of principle. And this is where I'm going to say that we need to start whenever we start building a fundraising program. We need to start with a thorough understanding of the principles, the immutable, universal, always operating, unchanging rules in fundraising that are there, whether we like it or not, whether we are even aware of them or not, because we are operating in a universe where they're always operating. So if we don't know them, or we're doing things that are acting in opposition to them, that will have a material effect on our outcomes. It'll be like being in a headwind rather than a tailwind. Can anyone give me? Let's go to the next slide. Here's a perfect example of an operating principle, and this is the principle of gravity. Is there anyone in our group that is not subject to gravity? Any responses?
Nope. No one's.
Okay.
People saying no, not me.
Okay, great. All right. The point is this. That's a bit facetious, but the point is gravity operates on all of us, and it operates on us when we're not even aware that it's operating on us. It isn't constantly in our mind. I'm sitting at my desk now, in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, and what's holding me in this chair is gravity. What's holding the furniture on the floor is gravity. You know, when I'm in here working during the course of a day, I don't think about that, but it is true operating all the time. What are some other, and we don't need to talk about fundraising at this point, but what are some other principles that are always operating that we may not be thinking about, that we're all subject to? Anyone want to make some proposals?
Ariel says breathing. That's a good one. Susan says she's competitive. That's pretty interesting. Stacy says uncertainty. Wow, really good answers. Mm-hmm. Sonia says change. Change is a big one. Technology, mortality, entropy, death and taxes.
All right. You're getting the concept here, is that there's some things that we have to live with. And either we work with them or we work against them. But they're not going to change. You know, we're the ones that have to modify our approach. And so can we go to the next slide, please?
Yep.
So the primary obstacle in most fundraising programs, if not all, is that they start in the wrong place. And they don't start with an understanding of the principles that are operating all the time. Now, I can tell you right now that the programs who do know these principles, and whether they call them the 8 principles or not is irrelevant. The point is they're operating within these. If you looked at their program, you could identify every single one of them and say, yep, this fits, this works. Those are the ones that raise money and more money every year, year in, year out, year in, year out. And then I'm going to say something else, because I believe this and I've seen it, because I've worked in very, very small organizations with 1 and 2 employees, and I've worked in very large organizations with tens of thousands of employees, that it's not a matter of how big you are, how much money you can throw at it, or how professional your staff is that ultimately determines your fundraising success. It just does not. What really ultimately determines your fundraising success is your understanding of these principles and your attitude toward them. That is what determines it, and everything else flows from it. Let's go to the next slide. And I call these the 8 principles of sustainable fundraising. You can call them anything you want, but these have come from my own experience. And as I've said before, if you look at organizations that are high-performing organizations, they follow these very, very closely, even if they're not really aware of them. Now, the one we're going to talk about today, if you'll move to the next slide, is Principle 5. work from the inside out. Now, you see the photograph there. So what happens when you drop a pebble or a rock into a lake? What happens? Anyone want to say?
Katie says ripples. Yep, ripples. Everyone's saying ripples.
Yeah, what kind of ripples?
Susan says impact. Dennis says that stone sinks. The waves get displaced. The water gets displaced. It's a magnified effect, somebody's saying, waves of energy.
Mm-hmm. Those are all correct. Let me add one other thing. Notice the shape of those, that they're concentric waves that move from the center of impact. And that's what I want you to focus on. And all those other things contribute. That's correct. The stone goes to the bottom, energy is displaced, waves go out, but they do it in a very specific way every single time. They start from the center and they move outward. So what I'm going to suggest to you, Principle 5, and we can go to the next slide, please, Steve.
Okay.
Is that what that says is that you need to focus your fundraising first on those who by relationship, and we can talk about that, and or affinity, have the strongest reasons to give. And these people I call your fundraising elites. Too often, and I think we both could point to situations or that we've been in, fundraising is an anyone, everyone, everywhere affair. And that's not what it is. Effective, sustained fundraising is very deliberate in its focus by beginning on those who have the greatest relationship and the strongest affinity with your organization and in terms of a reason to give. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
So let's talk about fundraising elites for a minute. I'd like for people to tell me who are their fundraising elites? What kind of people are their fundraising elites? Can we get some responses there? I'm not looking for names of individuals. I don't need your donor list. I'm looking for the kinds of people that we're looking for.
Seeing environmentalists, they're volunteers, parents of students, board members, more volunteers, alumni, people who know the founders, people who believe in the mission, lots and lots of answers coming in, customers, family members. Lots of people are talking about types of people, and other people are talking about people who care about the mission that they serve, it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think all of those answers are correct. And there again, what shapes some of these answers will be your paradigm, if you've done your work on your paradigm. Let's go to the next slide.
Right.
Now, my definition of a fundraising elite is someone who shares your in-game goals, is someone who has dreams which are supported and encouraged by your organization's values. Let's read that carefully. It's their dreams which are supported by your values. And then thirdly, has a built-in affinity for you through some sort of relationship. And there were lots of relationships mentioned in that list, whether it was an alumnus or an alumna, whether it was a board member, whether it was a staff member, a volunteer. Volunteers are mentioned a lot, and that's rationally so. But there is some affinity through a relationship. Now who comes to mind? Are we getting any additional responses?
People are saying businesses in the area that serve, people who share their mission, community members, people who are passionate about it, the diverse world. The church, people are saying. People who have a connection to the mission, people who want to make a difference, people who are looking to cure different diseases. Those who see how our organization affects the entire community. That's a good one.
There's one thing that is decidedly absent in that list. Can anyone pinpoint what is decidedly absent? One thing.
People are saying staff. People are saying themselves. Great to themselves. People who have the money. People who are already supporting you, perhaps.
All right. Here's what we've not mentioned. We've not talked about money, because guess what? It's not about money. And that was mentioned indirectly in one of the comments. It's not about money. So when you think of the word elite, we often think of someone who has money or power or both. And we've all heard it. Oh, go ask Sally, go ask Jim, they've got money. Well, guess what? That's only half the equation. It's not. There has to be an affinity. There has to be a relationship. There has to be a reason other than the fact that they have the ability to make the gift. So that's not what we're talking about here. That's not to say that you don't have people that your program won't abide by the Pareto rule, because it will. That's just one of those other sort of mathematical things that happens without you even trying. But the point is, that's not a person necessarily who is an elite. You're looking for someone who fits these other criteria. Now, why would that be so important? Did anyone want to venture? Why am I saying you need to focus on the elites first, in specific terms?
James saying that they will stick around. A couple people say they're low-hanging fruit. Lee says they're probably your donor base. They're the center of the impact. Best ROI, David says. They're dedicated. They're your ambassadors. They're your champions. Lots of different synonyms there. Vic says they have the ability and need to give. Catherine says they feel more connected and they want to do more. Miriam says they build momentum the fastest. That's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Another synonym.
Okay, these are all very good answers. Keep going, Steve. Let's hear some more.
They are driven by the goals of the organizations. They have allegiance. They have the luxury to dream. That's well put, Elaine. Thanks for that. They have skin in the game, Doug says.
We've got a poker player among us.
Jonathan says they go to bed thinking about your issues. Linda says they'll probably ask their friends. Laura
these are all very good reasons. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just saying.
What does Laura say?
They're your primary fuel.
Okay. These are all really good answers, and it says that you're thinking correctly here. And let's go to the next slide. I'm going to isolate 3 general reasons, and a lot of the responses we've been given fit into one of these 3. The first one be, you do your elites first because it focuses upon those who have the strongest reasons to give and give and give. So what does that do to your program? It creates revenue stability and growth. You get sustained revenue and growth. I have all the data. I don't generally like to put a lot of data in front of people because that isn't what convinces people. It's real life experiences that convince people. But if you just took a look at giving in the last recession, which was a pretty severe one, and you isolated giving from individuals who were connected in an investing kind of way, who were giving based on a values connection. And between the years 2007 and 2009, that kind of giving only declined overall by 1%. So you see, that kind of giving was very, very stable. Now, if you were hooked on independent foundation grants or transactional event revenue, then you could have seen a pretty severe drop in your bottom line, if that was a big part of what your revenue looks like. But in that case, you have that stability. Nextly, we heard several things related to networks. Networks are the king. People give to people. Even if you have the most wonderful mission on the face of the earth, and it's the most compelling thing ever, we're on the inside looking out, and so it's really easy for us to kind of, convince ourselves through self-talk that we're worth more than we are. That's just human nature. But if people are connected to other people, that's where it goes. And so that will actually grow your base, and then it grows it organically. I mean, doing data searches and that kind of thing can net new people, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I think it should be done. But if you're looking at the top retainers and the top growth that's stable, it's this organic growth that will get you where you need to go. So you have higher retention rates with this kind of growth. And then last, donors bring uneven commitment and differing resources. And I really sort of like to point to three things there. To me, there are three classes of supporters. Let's call them that for a minute. There's a responder, there's a donor, and there's an investor. Now, responders are those that show up at your gala, your auction, and buy a gift basket or a discounted trip to Hawaii. They were there for something other than philanthropy for the most part. Secondly, there are the donors. Now, those people who make a gift to you, but their reasons for making a gift may not be directly related to your mission. They may be, it's not that they don't believe in your mission, but it may be something else indirectly. And I'll give you a personal example. My neighbor across the street is also my dentist, so I need to be on good terms with him. But beyond that, he's a real big supporter of the Boy Scouts. Now, I was a Boy Scout. I like the Boy Scouts. Are they my top cause? No, they're not. But when Don comes over to ask me for a gift, I make that gift because he asks me. So in that sense, I'm a donor to the Boy Scouts. Will they ever be in my top three? No. Will I be giving them commensurate gifts to my ability? No. But I am a donor. And then thirdly, there's what I call your investors. And this is the group that I'm talking about. These are your elites. Now, investors can invest at a low level. They can invest at a high level. But the point is they have made an emotional commitment to the success of your organization. And an investor is just as valuable if they're giving you a seven-figure gift once or twice as the grandma has given you $50 a month for 30 years, because they represent that connection, that drive. And so they do bring uneven commitment and resources, so you're looking to grow that group of investors, and that's why you focus on elites first. You work from the inside out. Okay, now we're going to do a few exercises. Can we go to the next slide, Steve?
Okay.
All right. And you don't have to share this. I would like each of you to, on a piece of paper right now, write the names of 5 donors that you feel qualify as a fundraising elite. Let's take a couple minutes and do that.
Just so you know, Larry, I'm playing along home at 2. I got a little nonprofit I can do this for.
Good. Hey. Terrific. Okay. Let's hope you've been able to come up with 5 donor names. Can we get some responses? How many out there are actually able to put names to 5 people that you consider a fundraising elite for your organization? How many people were able to do that? Can we get some eyes out there?
Got lots of yeses. Yep, people saying it's easy. Somebody says they have 10. Somebody says they have 6. Many more than 5. That's great. Good job. Thanks to everyone for doing that. Susan says she's still writing. Many more.
Great. Okay, see, now you have a list of people that should be front of mind every day. Every day. These people, because they are the people who are responsible for the ultimate success of your organization, because they're going to supply the resources that do it. And it's not just the money. Remember, this isn't really about money. This is about something much larger than money. It's about spreading the word. It's about growing advocacy. It's about also contributing your resources, which will consist of both time and money. Everything grows together. Let's get some people talking about suggesting ways in which we can engage our elites. Can people suggest a few ways that we can actually reach out and engage people?
Evanescence volunteerism, events, spotlight them. That's a good idea. Newsletter, communicate, direct asks, personal visits. We love personal visits at Bloomerang for sure. Open houses, events, invite to dinner, personal meetings, social media, a couple times people have said, handwritten notes. Christina says transparency, great idea. Networking, more newsletters. Saying thanks, always a good idea to say thanks.
You know, and we know how abysmal that rate is.
Yeah.
While you're submitting your ways, I'll tell you a little story. I have a client that recently told me a story that he was given. It's an organization that gives scholarships for individuals in the grip of some sort of addiction, and these scholarships are to go for therapy, and they've had some pretty good success with this. And there was this one family who had a son who was in drug addiction, and he went through rehab using one of these scholarships, and they were pretty successful. And the family is a fairly well-heeled family, and they made a pretty significant gift to this organization. And the executive director reached out and called them up and thanked them and sent them a personal thank you note. And and you may think, well, there's nothing unusual about that. Well, the family said that in their history of philanthropy, this was the first time that had happened. They were stunned that someone called them back and said thank you.
Wow.
So that tells you how uncommon that is. It comes off the tongue pretty quickly, but in real life it doesn't happen very often. Let me suggest one other thing you can do that I didn't hear come back. When you get the opportunity, and you can do this personally, you can do this through social media, you can do this through some sort of formalized survey, although that's a bit stilted, but you don't have to physically put yourself in front of some person, although it's certainly the best way, and that is to ask one simple question. Why do you support us? And then wait for the answer. I guarantee you, if you do that with very many of your elites, you're going to get some very surprising answers. And I'll give you a personal story that I think will illustrate this. I was running a major gift program at a university back east, and I was visiting this gentleman who is a tech entrepreneur. He co-founded a company that everyone on this webinar would know immediately if I mentioned the name. And the person was older, and I'd been working with him for about a year and a half, and I was representing his alma mater. And he knew why I was there. He knew who I was. I don't make any excuses about that. And he knew that we were working on some sort of major investment for his alma mater. And at one point, that we'd been working on this for several months, and we're getting closer to something very formalized. This man, we were sitting at a restaurant in Northern California, in Silicon Valley, and he looks at me and says, "Larry, I have a very serious concern about making a significant gift to you," or to the university in this case. And of course, as a professional fundraiser, I naturally began to run through my mind all the possible conceivable problems that we could have. Oh, he didn't like the students on campus. There's the president. He was snubbed at an event. Who knows what? I mean, it just comes from everywhere. And then he said something that absolutely stupefied me. I was not expecting it. And then he said, "Well, I'm very concerned. I'm afraid that if I make you a really significant gift, you'll never come back to visit me again." Think about that. This man wasn't concerned about the money. He was concerned about the relationship. And I've seen that in lesser, obvious ways be repeated over and over and over again. And so I encourage all of you to get serious about really discovering what motivates your donors. And in my view, the best way to find that out is just to ask them. Let's go to the next slide.
Right.
I'm going to suggest to you that you achieve ongoing growth by doing three things. When you understand and apply all 8 of the principles, and understand and apply, it's one thing to say give mental assent, and it's another thing to work within them. 2, when you create a paradigm that's specific to your organization that is within those principles, not that's without it, and that when you do this consistently, and let me give you a metaphor. I don't know how many of you are sailors. I've been sailing a couple of times, but there's some things that you have to know when you're sailing. First of all, you have to be able to understand the weather where you are. That doesn't change. You have no control over that. You have to know the ocean you're in. You have to know your charts. You have no control over that. You have to build the right boat for that situation. That's your paradigm. And then and only then do you use the right techniques, the right sailing techniques that are suitable for that boat in that ocean. And you do it consistently. You don't get halfway towards your destination and decide, oh, I think I'll do something different. Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
I would like you to take, and you can share these if you'd like, but it's not required. I'd like you to list 3 actions that you can take based on what you've discussed today. What we've talked about today, what are 3 actions you can take right away? They may be very simple, they may be very incremental, but what 3 actions could you take today based on what we've talked about?
Lots of people are saying personal visits, meetings. Ask donor what motivates them. I think you made an impact, Larry.
Okay. All right, now let's do the reverse. List 2 things that you're going to stop doing as a result of today's discussion.
Darcy says, stop worrying about money. Making connections all about money. People are going to stop doing that. Broad mailings, not going to do that anymore. That's a good one, Charlene. Elizabeth says, stop procrastinating.
Oh, you know, I go to the gym. I try to keep myself relatively fit, and the month of January is the month I absolutely loathe because it's when everyone makes their resolutions, and it's about 30 to 45, maybe 60 days, and then we're back to normal again. So if you're going to resolve to stop, you better resolve to stop and then do it.
I agree.
Anything else interesting?
Christina says, focus on connections and not money. Focus on specific donors to build relationships. Chris says, I'm not going to worry about technology. That's good. Katie says, I'm going to stop avoiding telephone calls, and I'm not going to worry about the size of my... Phone calls are fun. You may actually find you like it, Katie.
Yeah. Well, I think the operative word in a number of these reasons is stop worrying about, you see. It's the anxiety piece. I mean, technology is we're living with it. I mean, I live with it this morning. And by the way, FYI, everything is back to normal on my system after we're through with this thing. Isn't that the way it always works? So,
of course.
But that doesn't mean we're going to be obsessed or worried about it. We worked around it today. You know, you weren't able to see, you know, my face. I even put, you know, I actually shaved and I put a nice sweater on, you know, everything, but it didn't work. So, okay, we'll go with that. Are there any unanswered questions that we can address before I move on? I mean, is there something that's really burning that people would like to ask now?
Ivana is wondering, how do you convince CEOs, board members, and staff members of these principles, of all the things you just talked about? How do you get buy-in, I guess, is the question.
Well, let me suggest that convincing is not going to be very successful. It's an experiential persuasion. My experience has been that you put them in a situation where there's a team building exercise or some other event which tends to bring people together, and you help them work through each of these on their own. They have to experience it. Talking at them or telling them go read the book and come back will maybe affect 1 out of 1,000. All right, there has to be that experiential piece. That's what I do in my business, is that I coach people to do that, is to bring it together. But it has to be that common bond, that common experience, and what some people call shared experience. And there will be some people who never get it, and that's okay. But that's the people you invite to maybe do something else rather than be on your board or do something else. Or as I heard from one development officer at a university out here, well, you know what we do with board members that don't perform? We plaque and whack them. You give them a plaque and you whack them off the board. So I've always liked that when I heard that. So, and those of us who are in fundraising have been in situations where we'd all like to do that. What else? What other questions?
Got one from Susan. Susan's saying the competition in her area is very big. It's got a lot of competing nonprofits. What would you say to Susan, who wants to do all these things, but is finding that it's very competitive, especially in her small geographic area?
Okay. I have a clarifying question. What sort of competition is this competition from similar organizations or all nonprofits?
See. We'll give Susan a moment to respond. So Susan says there's a lot of donor burnout, and that she has 3 of the same type of organization in their county alone.
Okay. Well, there are a couple of things going on here. Typically, when people say competition, they're referring to the plethora of nonprofit organizations. And many of these organizations, they're approaching anyone and everyone. And as we know, there are certain donors in every community that are on everyone's list because they have money, because they're generous, irregardless of whether they have any real connection or affinity for what you do or how you do it. They're still approached. And this is one of the big contributing factors to burnout, that and asking people too often, which is always the #1 negative that comes back every year. So that's a more typical kind of competition. And to that answer, my response is you're not in competition with them at all if you're focusing on people who believe in what you do. Because there will be people who like you more than they like something else. And if you're focused on those, which is what we're talking about today, or fundraising elites, that's going to be far less of a factor. Now, the other kind of competition where there are 2 or 3 organizations that do very similar things, there are really only 2 paths that are open to you. And that is, you either decide to collaborate and cooperate in some way toward a common good, or you just decide that you're going to have the best possible outcomes of any of these organizations, and you appeal to people on that basis. Because what we're seeing in the millennial generation is they're all about impact. They're all about effectiveness. When I first got into this business, I never, ever got an outcome or effectiveness question from a donor unless we were talking about a gift of at least 6 figures. With millennials, and that's adults between the ages of 25 and 35, you get those questions for a gift of $50. And so that is going to do a lot of sorting out among some of these organizations on its own. So those are really your 2 options in that regard. Did that answer your question, Susan?
She says yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. What else? We have a couple more minutes here.
Yeah, we got some time. Lots of questions coming in. I'm just going to kind of pick things out that look interesting. Wanda here says, how do you expand your elite base? How do you transition a donor to an elite? So I think people know they have some elites, but they want more, obviously.
Well, let's go back to networks are king. Who do these elites know? You know, if a person is truly an elite, they think you're the best thing since sliced bread. And they are more than willing to invite their friends and other people or share the fact that they really think you're terrific. And people like to be asked to do this for the most part, not put upon. Now, there is a very real difference. You know, Sally, you know, I see that you're a friend of Jim. You belong to the same country club. You know, we really are trying to get him to make a gift. Why don't you do that? That's far different from saying to Sally, Sally, you know, we so appreciate your support and your commitment to this organization. We'd like you to serve and help us identify new people that we think would have the same values and same concerns as you, and we could add in the support of our organization. Far different, you see. Then she's not pressed upon to triangulate with another person, and then it becomes more organic, more natural. I mean, you can do it through a data analysis, and you get some sort of fall through the screens with that kind of thing, but the retention rate's low. I'm not suggesting you don't do it because these tools have become very inexpensive as compared to what they used to be. But still, the organic way is the best, and you simply ask someone, but don't put them on the spot by asking to triangulate to another donor. Did that answer your question?
She hasn't responded yet. I hope she does, though. Yes, Wanda says yes. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Wanda. What else, Stephen? Anything else? Let's take one more.
Yeah, we got one here. Let's see. One from Mary Lee, and I know that she probably speaks for a few other people attending. Mary Lee says, we are a startup. They're all founder-funded so far. She's wondering, how do they leap beyond and find others who will care beyond just those initial founders?
Well, I'm going to use the B word for that. Your leadership board is really the place where a lot of this starts. There are only 3 reasons why a person should be on a nonprofit board. Their duties are to advocate, well, first of all, to define the policies of the organization so that staff can operate in a healthy and productive way, to advocate for the organization to everyone that they know, and thirdly, to make sure that the resources are there. And if you have a group that's functioning in that way, then you'll be able to start building your network at that point. Now, the good news is this. You're a startup organization. That's actually not a bad thing. And I only have to give you the experience that I had when I tried to learn golf several years ago. I'll admit I went through 3 sets of lessons, and you know it if you looked at me today. And one of my pros said to me, well, Larry, there's actually good news. You don't have any bad habits to unlearn. Well, the same thing applies here. You don't have any bad habits yet. So you're really in a very great position to begin to build this. But it's organic. It's not, 5 today and 500 next week. It's 5, it's 10, it's 50, it's 75, it's 150. It's that kind of thing. So there has to be a reasonable expectation. Did that answer your question, Mary Lee?
Yep, she says yes, thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to offer you some more things here that you can look at. I think, as I said before, it's important to know that you have to understand all the principles and put them all together. And when you do that, that's what gives you the synergy. And if you just go onto my website, which is theaprinciples.com, and you click on the link on the front, right on the splash page that says Discover the Unique Fundraising Idea, there are 4 short videos, and they have accompanying PDFs that are sent to your mailbox. They're free of charge, and you can view those as many times as you'd like. I'm also offering 5 complimentary one-on-one 50-minute consults. If you just go to callwithlarry.net, there's a schedule there, and there's a place where you can schedule a time with me. And then lastly, Amazon sells the book for $21. Barnes & Noble sells it for $29. We sell it on the website for $29. Those of you who participated today, we'll send it to you $15 postpaid. Use that email address, communicate, someone will get back to you, and then take your information over the phone and we'll get it out to you. I want to thank you again And I want to thank you, Steve, and go out and raise some money, build some friendships.
This is a lot of fun, I really appreciate everyone who was a good sport and participated and answered questions and asked questions. It was a lot of fun. I'm usually a bystander, so this is kind of fun for me to be so involved. So thanks, Larry. This is really cool. One of our more unique interactive sessions. So thanks for doing it. Honestly, is it fair to say that would you answer some more questions that we wouldn't be able to get to?
Sure. I mean, if you've got time, I've got some time.
Okay. I meant offline. I should have said if people could reach out to you and ask more questions.
Well, yeah, right now for a few minutes, or as I said, you can go onto the callwithlarry.net and schedule a specific time, and we can talk about your specific needs.
Cool. Well, we'll send a link to all that. I'll be sending out the recording a little later on this afternoon, as well as the slides. So look for that from me a little later on this afternoon. And with that, we'll let folks go. I know some folks maybe haven't had lunch, so thanks for hanging out with us for an hour. Thanks for taking time out of your day. And Larry, thanks again to you for hanging out with us. It was a lot of fun.
It was my pleasure. And let me just say to all the participants, if any of this technology does not work, just send an email to info@the-principles, and someone will get back to you. Okay,
cool. And just so everyone knows, we do these webinars every Thursday. We're actually taking next Thursday off because on Wednesday, we're having a special 4-hour-long webinar. It's our first online conference called BloomCon. Registration, we're running out of space. There's only about 100 seats left. We open it up to 1,000 people. You can check that out. Just go to bloomerang.co/BloomCon. Again, it's free. You can hear from Adrian Sargent, Tom Ahern, and Kitty LaRue Miller, and they're going to do a panel at the end of the presentation. So check that out if you've got some time free on Wednesday. If not, look at our webinar page. We've got a lot of webinars scheduled out through February and March, so you may see a topic there that interests you. We'd love to see you again on one of our webinars. So with that, we'll call it a day. Look for an email from me a little bit later on, and if we don't talk again, have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.